Vargax gently removed the blade of his intricately wrought spear from the chest armor of a 12th Legion squad sergeant who lay in a crumpled mess at his feet. This was messy work indeed. The countless waves of World Eaters paying such little importance to their own self-preservation stole any elegance from the melee, constantly forcing the steadily dwindling defenders on the back foot. This urgency had required Vargax to utilize an economy of movement he had never experienced. Throughout the many decades he'd fought to expand the Emperor's domain and reunite humanity against myriad threats that lurked in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Testament to the ferocity and savage nature of Angon's sons. Testament to the Emperor's fine work in creating the Legiones Astartes. His disgust was too overwhelming to admit even a sliver of grudging respect, however, and though he and the men who rallied around him were being pushed to breaking points, they would dispatch every last whoreson traitor who spat on their oaths and turned from the Imperium. A moment's reprieve then, as the tide of white and blue armoured legionaries surged back, ready to crash again against the immaculate defences Vargax commanded in the ruins of the Coral City. As the roaring of fast approaching chain axes drowned out the cacophony of ranged weapons fire, Vargax raised his spear and roared, "For the Emperor! Death to his foes!"
Hello everyone and welcome to my project Retrospective episode number 8, where we'll be taking a closer look at Legion Champion Vargax of the Emperor's Children. Now this chap is a seminal character in what is a sort of community collective project, I suppose, where a lot of people are from around social media are making little projects for XIVth 3. So it's the hashtag return to Istvan. That's ISSTVAN for Istvan, that's spelling. Where a lot of people are making little forces together to play in games around the world, I expect, but mostly centred, I think, in the UK. It was started by a few big heresy players here within the UK, and it's something I've piggybacked because it's not always about the 14th Legion. I am, as you all know, a bit of a hobby butterfly, but I decided to jump on board and start a loyalist Emperor's Children list. So it's 1500 point list, and I just love the idea of creating a very sort of imperial sort of aesthetic, loyalist aesthetic, plenty of eagles and all this kind of stuff, pomp and ceremony, the intricacy of the armour and ostentation, and indeed opulence of the Emperor's Children being quite juxtaposed to my beloved 14th Legion. So I decided to do a little project, and I wanted to show off a couple of the characters that I've worked on, and these are fairly recent conversions that I've done, fairly recent projects within my retrospective, but I wanted to showcase them for you and have a little bit of a closer look, dissect the models themselves, look at the processes I've used in their creation, and sort of take it from there and break down the components and whatnot. So without further ado, in my typical style, I will start from a bottom-up approach with the model itself. Okay, as ever, I will overlay images of kits where you can find components to use in your own projects over the top, and I will edit any notes if I do forget anything throughout the course of the video. Okay, so for starters, you'll see that he is on a 40mm base. Again, not compulsory by any means for an HQ choice, but I like the idea of having a larger base for characters, because I think basing, well, there's the age-old expression, bases and faces. I think that by having a lovely intricate base, you can really tell a lot of a story of an individual model. So this is by no means finished. There will be an awful lot more added on here as I go forward, as I get closer to sort of completing the force and getting them ready for paint. But for starters, this is these little bricks, tiles, slabs, or whatever you want to call them. They have been made using a Green Stuff World sort of rubber, it's like a silicon mould that I use very often for basing because they are quite fantastic. The material itself is milliput. It's the terracotta variety. There is, as far as I'm aware, no actual difference to the standard grey milliput or yellow grey milliput. other than the colour, and I think that's just a pigmentation. Milliput is used for a range of different things, not just modelling, but indeed repair of pots and all that sort of stuff for gardening. So, but I've just churned out a load of the tiles there. Milliput's great when it's totally cured. It's very crumbly, so you can create very realistic cracking effects, which obviously works very well with the theme itself for this army, which is the devastated ruins of the Coral City on XIVth 3. Okay, so there will be plenty of other bits and pieces of battlefield detritus on this base that will tie it in even further. But just for starters, I think this is a good place to kick off from, as it were. The legs are from a now out of production Forge World kit, which is the Mark II, which is Crusade Armor Mark II Command Squad. Okay, so I've taken those legs. You can see those wonderful lightning bolt details on the bottom of the right greave there, and I think there's a scroll detail on the left greave. Again, very fitting for a veteran of the Crusade, certainly a member of the Emperor's Children, and maybe this guy was one of the original. I think there were 100 when the Legion had a bit of a crisis at the beginning of the Great Crusade, where their gene seed was extremely unstable, and they almost risked being completely wiped out. And then I think when Fulgrim rejoined the Legion, I believe, again, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe they went from strength to strength there, and they got an awful lot more Marines added as they went forward. But I know for a while, for a spell, one of the reasons why Fulgrim and Horus were so close was that the sort of very diminished 3rd Legion, they just didn't have the manpower to go off on their own expeditions across the galaxy. So they were under Horus's wing for some time, I think. So they shared doctrine, and obviously Horus and Fulgrim became very close indeed. So, but back to the armor itself, that lightning bolt motif, which is very, very typical of Crusade, and indeed I believe it's one of the emblems of the Emperor himself. So this guy maybe even fought alongside the Emperor at some point, or at least the Emperor's cohorts when before Ulanor, I should say, when the Master of Mankind took to the battlefield himself to reclaim the galaxy in humanity's name. Now you can see I've done my classic lengthening of the shin armor there. It's actually really simple with Mark II armor, because you just have those overlapping plates. You just need to make sure that they're the right kind of length and depth, and then after that's cured, I've sort of smoothed it down, created those gaps at the back there for that soft armor, for those little power cables, and then I've very gently taken tiny rivets off of other components. It's usually from Cataphractii armor, actually, that I get these little rivets from, and I've added those on very gently just to match the plates just above. So that's very fitting. So when that's completely painted, that should look seamless. It should look very natural, and as if the legs haven't been converted in the least. Okay, so the tabard section is from one of the Black Templar plastic upgrades. Again, it's now an out of production kit, but it shouldn't be too challenging to get hold of these torsos. If you ask people nicely on social media, they should be able to sort you out. But I've just taken that lower part of the tabard and I've shaped it so it fits in with the legs quite nicely. The legs themselves have just, I don't think I've even heated them to change the stance itself, but I've just cut away some of the material, the plastic material of that tabard to fit in with the legs. And once I've added the body, the torso, onto the legs, I've just sort of gap filled with a mixture of green stuff and milliput there to make it look like a natural flow of drapery. Okay. Now the torso itself is from the Sternguard Veteran box. Okay. Now this is, I believe, still a continued kit. It's not discontinued. You should still be able to find this in G-dubs. If I'm mistaken, I'll have a look after this video, but I'll make a note if they are in actual fact a little bit more challenging to get hold of. But again, the reason I've used this is because it's a little bit more detailed. There was in fact a veteran symbol on the large belt buckle there, which I've removed, and I'll probably end up putting a decal on there, be it a raptor head that ties in with the Crusade, or something slightly different like the Legion number, number 3 in Roman numerals. But the gorget of this armour is so fitting for the Emperor's Children. So you've got the Aquila there, and you've got that lovely sash going down from the top right of his torso, and that tucks neatly underneath the belt there as well. Okay. Now, in fact, both of the plastic shoulder pads are also from the same kit, from that Stern Guard kit. So you've got the one on his right arm where he's pointing out those 3 fingers. He's sort of issuing a command to the defenders of the Coral City, and that has a beautiful jewel there in the middle, which will be lovely to paint up in some kind of interesting colour, perhaps a blue or something along those lines. And you've got that lovely sort of imperial laurel wreath there as well, which will be a delight to paint up, certainly in a lot of the golds that I have intended for these guys as well. Now, in fact, I'll quickly mention it now. I'll go into it in a little bit more detail down the line, but I'm intending to copy XIVth's. He's got a fantastic looking Emperor's Children army, and I've been badgering him with his colour scheme and paint scheme, which I'll be following down the line. So it will be a metallic purple for these guys with some very rich scale 75 golds in there as well, which should look absolutely awesome when it's totally done. Alright, so both shoulder pads from the Stern Guard. For the left pad, I've just removed any detailing that might have been there before. I think in fact this might have been a veteran symbol there, and I've taken from the Emperor's Children, I believe, the Palatine Blades, which is a very loved squad, a beloved squad from Forge World, and I've dremeled the pad away and very gently stuck that on, and you can see where behind that sort of sweeping wing, I've filled in that detail there with, again, a mixture of green stuff and milliput, just to have that adhere quite nicely to the pad itself, so there's no risk of any damage or anything along those lines down the line. Now, the right hand, which is pointing with 3 fingers, is from Primaris Incursors. Okay, I think it's a relatively new kit. Now, whilst I very famously am not a very big fan of Mark X armour in Horus Heresy, again, I think it's got no place at all. Lazy heresy, all this kind of stuff. There are some fantastic Primaris components which should not be overlooked when making unique characters for the Horus Heresy and the setting in general. Okay, so again, this guy has that 3-fingered command. I'm no military man, but I'm sure this does have some practical use in the real world. Not that there's any relevance at all, because of course this is set 28,000 years in the future, but nonetheless I thought that looks pretty cool. Again, this guy, Champion Vargax, is a sort of a desperate defense against a seemingly endless tide of traitor marines sort of moving in on their position there, supported by armour and all sorts as they go. So the left hand is from the Mark III box set. So the hand holding originally a gladius, just very gently taken that gladius off and drilled a hole through there and used some plasticard there and attached that to a Conversion World. Now, these are an American company that makes some absolutely incredible close combat weapons, amongst a few other things. I've worked with a few of their kits before. It's excellent quality. No printing, evidence of printing or anything along those lines. Really well done. And again, just if you want to add a little bit more elegance and ingenuity across your legions, they do kits that would be suitable for pretty much any legion out there as well. Okay, so do look them up, and that's at Conversion World. Okay, so very much a fan of their stuff. Now, the head is from an Age of Sigmar Stormcast Eternal set called the Vanguard Hunters. Okay, now long flowing hair. I think he's got a braid in there as well. Extremely fitting. If you've read anything about the Emperor's Children, and indeed the Blood Angels, they're quite similar in a lot of their aesthetic, but long flowing, usually silver coloured hair, which they don't mind having a little bit more detail with. They're very different, in fact chalk and cheese to legions like the Iron Warriors and Death Guard in their aesthetic overall. And actually, interestingly, the Iron Hands as well are quite drab and not too detailed. So I thought this would be an ideal head to use for a character for the 3rd Legion. I hope you agree, and it fits in quite nicely, obviously, with the the direction of the tabard there as well. So I do think these things through when I am putting components to a model together, wind direction and all this kind of stuff as we go, just to make sure that it ties in properly and the model doesn't contradict itself down the line. So that's from the Vanguard Hunters, a Stormcast Eternals box. And the backpack, which is magnetized in case I wanted to give this guy a jump pack, indeed, which would be a Mark II jump pack, is from I think it's from a Dark Angels character, one of the Praetors, I believe. So it's got that CAD design to it. It's very crisp, a nice cast by any means. No issues there whatsoever. But just again fitting with that Mark II armor, you've got that Mark III backpack, there as well. As for the accessories, I think he's got his pistol there from again the Mark III box set. He's got the crack and frag grenades as well, I believe from the same set or something similar. And that little tube there with the purity seal, the Oath of Moment, I believe you could call it. I believe that is also from another one of the Primaris kits, but don't quote me, I couldn't tell you which one. Answers below if you know, so we can furnish everyone with that detail if they are interested where that's from. I might do some digging to try and find it out myself in a little bit, but it depends how much time I have to edit this video moving forwards. So there we go. So this is Champion Vargax of the Emperor's Children. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be following KizDugs at KizDugs, so it's KIZZDOUGS, and that's on Instagram. Extremely talented painter and modeler from Down Under. He's one of these guys that I have within my top 5 hobby inspirations, and I'm sure that you'll agree that he is one of these guys that is able to consistently knock out extremely high quality models and actually armies as well as he goes. And he's very well known for a beautiful Alpha Legion force that he did a while back, and of course his 3rd Legion, and I think he has a mixture of loyalists and traitors moving forward. So I may have glossed over a couple of his other projects, but check out his stuff. Realised as well very quickly that I missed out the arms for this guy as well, which are again from the Ravenwing Bike Command Squad. Okay, I've got so many of these arms backed up in my bits boxes because they are really expressive, great poses, and they fit in very nicely with Mark II and Mark III armor down the line. So apologies for missing that out. If you are scratching your head earlier in the video thinking, what the hell, this guy hasn't mentioned where they're from, now you know. All right. So other than the leg lengthening, you can see there as well where I've had to cut away the right foot just to remodel it there, and I've filled in that gap with a mixture of green stuff and milliput. But I've also done the soft armor underneath his right arm there, so you can see that ribbing of that soft armor, which will be painted up in like a black rubber. The left arm itself is flush to the body. Okay, so I believe that's everything. Really looking forward to, I've got a few more bits and bobs to do. I've got a unit of Sun Killers, which are a very famous Legion unit for the Emperor's Children. So they're a las cannon heavy support unit where they're all shoulder mounted, and again they look a little bit fancy, certainly fancier compared to a lot of standard unit heavy support units in Legion forces. I've got an assault squad to bring along for this force as well, and I have the Emperor's Children and one of the Blood Angels Contemptor Dreadnoughts on order as well from Forge World, which will be converted into ancient Rylanor, who was a very famous character within I think it's book 3, Galaxy in Flames, which is where you get the siege of the Coral City. So there we go. Champion Vargax in beautiful 3D for your amusement. For the Emperor, death to his foes.